way, way back. It might be, it could be, it is. Holy cow! Welcome to another broadcast of Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Cub fans, welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Thank you so much to our awesome sponsors, Wrigleyville Sports, the best sports store in Wrigleyville, and Yaggy Road Roasting Company, based in Valpo, Indiana, serving cups of coffee just as special as the moments you drink them in.
Hello, welcome to Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Brickheads, welcome to Bricks Behind the Ivy, a Cub podcast for Cub fans, by Cub fans. We dive deep into all things North Sides, and today we're heading down onto the farm. I've got Greg Huss from the Cubs on Deck podcast joining me today to talk about what you should be looking for down on the farm. Greg, how are you doing today?
Jeff, I'm good, man. The intro is terrific. I absolutely love it. I'm glad to be here, and excited to talk prospects. That's what I do best, I guess.
Now, just in case the adoring public and Brickheads don't know, you're soon to be a girl dad. The thing that made me think of that is my daughter is the end of that intro video. So soon you'll be able to have a cute little voice to manipulate into an intro of Cubs on Deck if you'd like to.
I'm getting ready to teach her everything she needs to know about Cubs prospects, so she gets to be under.
There you go. You know, it's cool because I think some of the minor league mascots have like way better plushes, which my daughter has really gotten into, where like the big league team, Clark's fine. It's just like there's a little more innocence with the minor leagues. But
yeah,
before we talk about some of the best souvenirs in the minors and from Myrtle Beach all the way out to Iowa, today's episode is proudly brought to you by Wrigleyville Sports, located right across from Wrigley Field, known for fast custom jerseys made for you just in time for game day so that you will have it for the seventh inning stretch. And usually have a box score blitz, but not for this special episode. But that's powered by Yaggy Road Roasting Company, which is a boutique roaster, which is based out of Valpo, Indiana, owned by three proud Valpo alums. Go Beacons, that's my alma mater. Their coffee's got more kick than a ninth inning rally. They make coffee as special as the moments you drink them in. So, Greg, we've been talking off air and through Twitter messages or X messages or however you want to address that about getting you on earlier in the minor league season, earlier in the baseball season to talk about Cub prospects. You know, I think Theo Epstein kind of really changed the game and how Cub fans process baseball. It's not just about the major league team. We had a very long rebuild starting in 2012, the official rebuild, not the non-rebuild we've had under Jed Hoyer, but which really turned the tier. And we have things like Marquee and some of our minor league broadcasters that get opportunities at the major leagues. You know, Alex Cohen obviously getting the big time gig now, and Brendan King from time to time being on the network. But with that focus on minor league baseball, Cub fans' attention has moved there to what's coming next. So I figured we kind of go through all the affiliates and find the best prospect there to watch and one you have your eye on that might not be on a top list. So Cub fans can start digging in themselves.
Yeah, no, I'll add in one. You mentioned really Theo kind of driving fans' excitement about prospects with that rebuild, but also I think that looking back on it, the development isn't linear or whatever the one like phrase was from Theo, that
yes.
Like that one sentence I feel like has made a big difference on fans really getting into the minor leagues and the prospects, because it's like they want to know what was that development process, like what actually happened, like to get them to this point. And that's why I'm into prospects, right? Is to follow them once I'm a Chicago Cubs fan. Like I'm not born and raised a Iowa Cubs fan or a KnoxvilleSmokies fan, right? I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, so I want to know how these guys get to the majors, and so like that's why I'm into prospects. And that one sentence from Theo Epstein kind of set up a new wave of people interested in how prospects got to this point. So yeah, I mean, do you want to start off at the lowest levels? You want to start off at the highest levels?
Absolutely. Let's go all the way to Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach is one of the several of the minor league teams for the Cubs that I have had the opportunity of going to see. Really, really nice ballpark experience. I was there a few years ago to catch up a little known prospect named Moises Ballesteros. And it was, he did not disappoint. I remember in between getting food for my kids at the long lines at the concession stands there, I did see him smack the bejesus out of a baseball that when you're in a minor league stadium, there's a sound of major league talent that just isn't from the other players. And that guy had that like Kyle Schwarber, like sounding like explosion of lumber. It was just really special. But obviously he's moved on to closer and bigger and better things at Iowa. But who you got your eye on down in Myrtle Beach this year?
Yeah, Myrtle Beach is a fun team. They're an interesting team, right? So I think that right now we'll get into Iowa later, and because Iowa really has all the top prospects at the highest level of the minors, and as you go down, Tennessee, or Knoxville, and South Bend, their teams aren't quite as prospect laden, and then you get to Myrtle Beach, where if you're looking at MLB Pipeline and looking at the top 30 prospects according to MLB Pipeline, I believe that the Cubs only have two, or the Myrtle Beach Pelicans only have two players from that top 30. Cole Mathis and Angel Cepeda, I think, is the other guy that's on the list.
Those are the two, yes.
And really, from a top 30 perspective, there's not a whole lot of talent there, but there's a whole lot of like breakout capability or breakout potential down in Myrtle Beach right now. So Cole Mathis is definitely one of those guys, right? He was drafted last year. He's the highest draft pick the Cubs have remaining from their 2024 draft class after they traded away Cam Smith. So Cole Mathis kind of is that guy in terms of a bats. Angel Cepeda is another guy that is worth keeping an eye on, and he kind of represents a prototype of player that the Cubs have in the lower levels. Between Angel Cepeda, Jefferson Rojas is one of those guys where they're teenage infielders. Ariandes Ramon is a little bit older at 21. He's on the Myrtle Beach roster. But then even guys down in Arizona, Derniche Valdez, there's Fernando Cruz that's down in the Dominican Summer League coming up to the stateside too. Like there's a lot of young shortstops. And from that group of like, let's say 6 or 7 dudes, we're hoping that 1 or 2 of those guys actually breaks out and actually becomes a top prospect in this organization. You're not going to hit on all 7, obviously. But I look at Angel Cepeda, and I think that he might be one of those guys that does break out in a big way. He is making his full season debut in Myrtle Beach to start off the year. He is a shortstop at that level. He is manning shortstop on a daily basis. And I can confirm it is Angel Cepeda, not Angel Cepeda, which I've been saying Angel Cepeda for forever. Dude, I'm telling you, hosting a Cubs minor league podcast is tough in terms of getting names right, because like you're not hearing them necessarily on a daily basis like you are in Chicago. So, but yeah, confirmed it is Angel Cepeda for him. But yeah, really tooled up shortstop. A lot to like about Angel Cepeda. On the pitching side of things down in Myrtle Beach, there's a lot of the draft picks from last year. The Cubs went out on day 3 and got a lot of college arms. And so you're going to see guys like Hayden Frank and Evan Oschenbeck, guys like that, Brooks Capel down in Myrtle Beach. And really, it's just a matter of who's going to break out. I really like Evan Oschenbeck quite a bit. He's a guy that last year was at Texas A&M, spent some time at Texas A&M in the SEC, and he was actually won the award for what college baseball calls the stopper of the year, the closer of the year, whatever you want to call it. But he was stopper of the year in all of college baseball. He was a first-team All-American. The Cubs brought him in and converted him to being a starting pitcher as a pro. And so he's a guy I've really got my eye on this year. He's too good for low A. Like, he's way too good for low A. He may get the bump up to South Bend pretty quickly. I wouldn't rule out him making it all the way up to Double A Knoxville this season. So he could be a guy that spends his time at 3 different levels in 2025, which is super exciting. One more guy I'll kind of call out is Alexi Lumpoy. Alexi Lumpoy kind of burst onto the scene. He was a signing back in 2023. I hadn't heard. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the Dominican Summer League because there's so many guys that don't end up making it stateside from that group. But Alexi Lumpoy is stateside for the first time this year and got the assignment to Myrtle Beach and was leading off the first game of the year, and got some pub from Jared Banner with, I think he did an interview through The Athletic or through Pipeline or somewhere, but was giving Alexi Lumpoy some love. So just a handful of names there that I've got my eyes on looking to break out this year.
Do you see, especially in the lower A, I know obviously the Cubs hired from Tread Tyler Zombro, who we had on the program, like shortly after he was hired around CubsCon. And do you see he's going to add a big impact more on the lower levels, or do you think he's going to be kind of touching stuff on the higher levels, or do you think it's going to be an organizational philosophy approach with him?
Yeah, I think it'll probably be an organizational thing. I think in the same way that we saw that from Craig Breslow during his time in the Cubs organization, I think we see that from Zombro, where yeah, I think he'll be impacting what we see in Chicago, but I think that he's also going to be impacting guys that are just signing and coming into the organization for the first time. I think it's a philosophy, like a change in philosophy. I think it's a change in the way guys train, the way guys throw their bullpens and things like that. And so, yeah, I think that's going to impact the entire organization from top to bottom.
I'm really excited to see kind of what he brings. It's definitely, I feel like it was a really sexy hire. Obviously, it was when we had talked to him too. He had said that he was being courted by a bunch of different teams, which I had the inkling based on how many national guys were on it when he was kind of circling. But I think it's always exciting when you think about like a development perspective, like guys picking the Cubs organization, like to help, kind of push things forward. Maybe the Cubs are trying to be more on the cutting edge, or he heard something that he liked or saw something he liked in their draft philosophy. So definitely looking forward to, kind of following some of the pitchers more than some of the hitters this year to see if there's an immediate effect.
No, you know what I think is huge is assuming the Cubs are now like really and truly competing to make the playoffs in this year and the years in the future. They're going to have worse draft picks, right? They're not going to have these. The past few years they've been like 13, 14 as far as draft picks go. Assuming they're competing for the playoffs and competing for the World Series, they're going to have draft picks closer to like 25, 26. That's the hope. And so with that, not only do you have the 26th pick in the first round, but you have less of a pool of money to pay your draft picks, right? And so the draft picks you're getting are not nearly as good. And so for Tyler Zombro and staff to make the most of guys coming in the organization, they're not getting the Cade Hortons anymore. That's not a guy that's just plopping down in their system, super, super talented. Like they're going to have to make the most of these guys. And I think that's where Zombro comes into play.
Yeah, I think it's, super interesting as someone who has tried to get a little bit more in tune with how the draft works. I think that there's probably a lot of casual baseball fans that don't realize that it's not like the NBA when you're getting like 1-1, there's not necessarily this generational talent. There's like this dance of how they use their slot money, and they have a budget and trying to get a guy maybe just take a little bit more than he should have in the first round, and maybe overpaying someone a little bit later or underpaying someone a little later, and playing this game. It's a dance. It's all these
dance is so
points.
Accurate. That is such an accurate description. I love that.
It's truly bizarre. It's not this straightforward, like, well, they took him 1-1 and that's settled. He's a superstar. It's not. Like you're trying to really get these guys to take potentially less money in certain sections, because honestly, it's probably Theo Epstein that got that rule change, because he gave life-changing money to the guys that were kind of on the fence of whether or not they were going to be pro baseball players, and really hit on a lot of them when he was with the Red Sox.
You know what I hate? I hate so much when people watch the draft and they see that they signed a guy for like under their slot bonus threshold, and they're like, oh, like the Ricketts are cheap, or like insert team's name ownership is cheap. It's like, no, that's not how this works. Like all teams end up spending like their allotment of money. Like I promise all the teams spend their money. And so like it's not
2 hours in MLB The Show. Like you'll learn a lot about like a little bit about the slot.
when you give an underslot bonus to Cole Mathis, it's not the Ricketts being cheap. I promise.
Yeah.
Like
well, hold on, you guys have plenty of other things. Yeah, exactly. Like there's other people you can yell at and other things you can yell at. The draft is not the time for that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's a really good transition to, since we're laughing, to talk about one of the more fun organizations in the Cubs minor leagues, South Bend Cubs. They've done such a great job at that ballpark. They've really turned into a destination for rehabbing players. I know that there's been some articles of aspirations of a higher affiliation within the organization, for which, could be really interesting for not just, the Cubs in general and how that affects everyone else, but really interesting for South Bend as, someone who lives in the southeastern suburbs. South Bend is not that far away, and I think there's a lot of advantages there. But beyond just the political component, who are the players to watch over at South Bend? And to me, like, it starts with Jackson Wiggins.
Yeah, I think Jackson Wiggins is the biggest name on the pitching side of things to watch for sure. He came out his first start of the year and was kind of all over the place with his fastball. Like just all of the command and control were not there. He looked a little bit better in outing number 2, but I think that's a good description of like what we're watching for Jackson Wiggins throughout this year is that command and control, because the fastball is certifiably good, right? Like that, it's a good pitch. The slider I think is really strong, and I'm on the record as saying his changeup is actually his best pitch. He very rarely uses it, but that trio of offerings that he has, I think, are all really good pitches. It's all like the stuff plus models will go crazy for all 3 pitches, but now he's just got to land it in the zone. He's got to throw it for strikes. He's got to command it. His mechanics get a little wonky, get a little crazy, but like if he can find this season, if he can find a way to kind of harness all those skills and like really bring it together, have a consistent delivery, have a consistent release point, consistently hit the mitt. Like it's all about consistency for Jackson Wiggins this year. And if he can do that, like he's a dude. Like I have him as my second ranked pitching prospect in the organization behind Cade Horton. And it's just because the stuff is so damn good. So yeah, he's the guy I'm that's appointment television. Every time Jackson Wiggins takes them out, it's watching him, and I've got just a magnifying glass. I'm going to be kind of hypercritical of Jackson Wiggins throughout this year because I think he's that good. I know that there were rumblings. Arizona Phil was talking a little bit about Jackson Wiggins and talking about how he may actually be better than Cade Horton. I'm not quite ready to say that yet, but he's pretty damn good.
Jackson Wiggins has definitely become appointment television, like you said, and he's a really exciting pitcher. I think he's, kind of in that, I don't know if older is the next necessarily the correct word, but, he's a little advanced, maybe for South Bend on the pitching side. Maybe I'm a little biased because of Cade Horton, but I'm hoping that like we can see something at South Bend so he can, move up the system. And really, I think AA has turned into the prove it ground for a lot of these folks. Is there's just not a lot rotation wise. I feel like to work on in AAA as that league has changed, dramatically in how it is run and how it's offered and who they throw out every day. But we'll get to there. On the hitter side, is there, I know Jefferson Rojas, dating when we recorded this, just got activated, and they're going to have a pretty, prospect exciting double play combo up in South Bend for a bit there with Christian Hernandez, the A-Rod heir apparent when he was originally signed, and obviously Jefferson Rojas over at second base. What are you looking for in those two this year?
Yeah, man, that's Christian Hernandez is coming off the Midwest League Player of the Week last week, has been the best hitter in the system in the early going. Obviously, small sample sizes, all that good stuff, but he has been the best hitter in the organization so far to start off the season. Jefferson Rojas, like you said, just getting assigned there. He's a top 10 prospect in this organization. I have him, I think, 7th in the organization, in my rankings in the organization. So those are two guys that are watching. We're watching both of those guys up the middle a lot because they're both really, really impressive. Christian Hernandez, I want to hit on him a little bit because he did when he signed, he got all those comps, the A-Rod comps, the Manny Machado comps, like just so not fair, man. Like so so unfair to a 16, 17-year-old kid. And so he does have that prospect pedigree, right? Like he had that hype for a reason. It was unfair, but he had that hype for a reason. He came stateside. He went to Myrtle Beach. He really, really struggled, right? In 2023 was just not a good year in his first full season. And that's fair because he's a guy coming stateside. It's hard to put those A-Rod expectations on him. Struggled that year. He came back in 2024, had a pretty strong season last year where he was showing off his ability to make a lot of contact. The power wasn't there. The power was gone. I've seen a lot of scouting reports coming into this year where it's like, oh, he showcased great power last year. It's not true. He showcased zero power in 2024. It did not exist. And that's fine, right? Like he figured out how to make contact. He figured out how to pull down the swing strike rate a little bit, how to just put the ball in play, a high batting average. He was playing the field really well at shortstop. He was running the bases super well. He stole 44 bases last year in Myrtle Beach and South Bend. Really strong season across the board, except for the power department, right? Enter 2025, and now he's kind of reincorporating that power back into his game. That's really important, where he can maintain that feel to hit and all the other elements that he brings to the game, but also reincorporate that pop back into the mix. And that's what we're seeing from him so far in the early going. He's pulling the ball in the air a lot, and so that's really impressive. And I think that like he's, for a guy that was top 5 in the system for when he was signed, and then dropped down to outside top 30s, and now he's back in like the 15 range. I think that he's going to find himself back in the top 10 here by midseason, and really pushing to be a top 100 prospect in baseball again. And so that's really exciting. Jefferson Rojas is the other half, where he got up to a late start because of a hamstring injury down in Mesa. He's back in action. I'm really excited to see what he does in his second go around back at South Bend, see how he shows what he learned last year. He's another guy that swung and missed hardly at all last year in 2024. So see him demonstrate some pop, see him demonstrate some good talents in the infield as well at second base and shortstop. But those two guys are the guys we're going to be watching on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think I'll probably try to get out to. I have family out there. I'll probably try to get out to that ballpark and, like enjoy the young players while they're there.
Heck yeah.
Before they make a stop at the next team on our list, who has a brand new name, the Knoxville Smokies, not the Tennessee Smokies anymore.
My shirt is out of date.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was like, you're gonna have to get a new shirt. We're gonna have to call Joe and see if he can get you a new one there. I don't know if it's like the Bleacher shirts, if like since you own one, like you can get a reprint for free. But hopefully we can talk into that for you. But Knoxville Smokies, there's it's a different roster than last year. Last year, for me, there was a lot of focus because the top prospects were all starting there, and now they've all graduated to knocking on the door as they should. But this to me is kind of where I think the most exciting developments could be for the Cubs as they kind of look for that group after the group that they're in. Who are you looking at Knoxville as someone that could potentially break out?
Starting pitchers is where we're looking in Knoxville. Starting pitchers. There's some hitters. We can talk about Pedro Ramirez. We can talk about some of the hitters. But like really, if you're talking Knoxville Smokies, if you want to tune into a Knoxville Smokies game, pick out the starting pitcher you want to watch and watch because of that reason. Because there's plenty of starting pitchers there that are impressive. Will Sanders is a guy that jumps out off the page right away. He's had a really strong start to the season. He was a college draft pick out of South Carolina a couple of years ago. Was pretty inconsistent last year in 2024, kind of like in a lot of ways, a poor man's version of Jackson Wiggins in terms of the stuff that he showcased and the command has come out strong this year in terms of throwing a lot of strikes. So like what we're hoping to see with Jackson Wiggins this year, we're already seeing right out the gate with Will Sanders. So Will Sanders, name to watch. Grant Kipp was a guy that's kind of, he's not a top 30 prospect. He's pushing it. He's getting close, but if you look at Grant Kipp's numbers from the past few years, don't, because they're not pretty. But he threw 5 no-hit innings in his first start of the year for Knoxville. The slider's really good. I think the fastball is pretty impressive too. All of his pitches move in all kinds of different directions, so super fun with him. But we're also going to see Jackson Wiggins up there eventually. We're going to see potentially Arian Rodriguez up there once he becomes healthy and is ready to pitch again. Sam Armstrong is another guy. I think that Sam Armstrong, if we're talking breakout guys, Sam Armstrong is a guy that I could see following the same path as Brandon Birdsell, where in 2023, Brandon Birdsell was good, but not super impressive. And then he took those numbers and just enhanced them going into 2024, all the way to the point where he made it up to AAA Iowa. He was the Cubs minor league pitcher of the year. If you look at what Sam Armstrong did in 2024 compared to Brandon Birdsell in 2023, very similar numbers across the board, like outrageously similar. And so in an ideal world, you're going to watch Sam Armstrong take that next step that Brandon Birdsell took last year. Maybe Sam Armstrong's not the minor league pitcher of the year. That may be putting too high of expectations on him, but I think he can really make that type of breakout this year in 2025. So it's the pitchers, man. And that's not even to mention some of the relievers that are in Knoxville right now. Frankie Scalzo Jr. got assigned there. Zach Lee's a guy to keep an eye on. Mitchell Tyransky's another pitcher that could see Chicago later this year. So the pitching staff is the way to go for the Knoxville Smokies.
So I'm going to ask a question about the Smokies specifically, and I'm going to name drop what I think your big claim to fame is, the BASH metric. Last year, I think that if you looked at Matt Shaw and Ballesteros and the top prospects, depending on when you're looking at it, like their actually non-traditional, like advanced metric stats had their OPS and such, not looking like what you'd want to see of them dominating the league. But looking at your BASH metric compared to the rest of, double A or the component double A that Knoxville plays in, they were like off the charts on the bash metric, which is one thing that I think like a lot of folks, if you're not aware of it, go check out that information, because it really is like stats are important when you can compare them to something that like an average or a standard. Otherwise, it's just noise. So if you're looking at baseball stats and you're saying this guy's bad because of some assumption you have, that might not be correct. But if he is bad compared to, then you're starting an argument that might actually be valid. So with the bash metric, is there a component where like maybe pitching is a little overpowered? Is there more talented pitching in double A? Does the ball not travel? Like what is affecting these double A numbers?
Yeah, so last year it was the combination of two things. Why Matt Shaw was actually better than what his traditional stats said, right? So the first element is that my bash metric also takes into account age compared to their peers. And so Matt Shaw and James Triantos and Kevin Alcantara and I guess Owen Casey was in AAA, but those top prospects were significantly younger than the average hitter in Double A in the Southern League, and so that impacted their numbers quite a bit, because you'd rather have a guy be significantly younger than average, and you got to account for that in these numbers, right? So that's what the match metric does, and so that's one thing where it kind of propped up their numbers because they were so much younger than the league average. The other element is that the Southern League was a major pitchers league last year, especially for the first, like, I'd say 3 months of the year or so. But over the course of the season, it was a pitchers league where numbers were hard to come by. It wasn't necessarily a ballpark thing for the Tennessee Smokies at the time. It was more of a league thing where it was just tough to hit in that league. And I don't know what the reason behind that was. I know Double A has been a level where they've continued to tweak with the baseballs quite a bit over the years, so that may have had an impact on it. But yeah, Matt Shaw was and Kevin Alcantara and James Triantos were better than what if you look at their standard numbers over the course of their time in Knoxville or in Tennessee last year. That's gonna, man, that throws me for a loop. I'm still adjusting. I'm still adjusting to the Knoxville switchover. But yeah, it's they were pretty strong despite some of like all right numbers, you know.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see, what those guys do, which I think is a perfect transition to the Iowa Cubs, which you dating this recording is that roster is changing as we speak with Luke Little and Daniel Palencia graduating up to the big club. And a little bit of a shocker for me for some weird reasons. When I think like I kind of want to get your perspective, Matt Shaw getting demoted today. I think the Cubs gave a lot of confidence this offseason in him being the guy. I was looking at, Baseball Savant and some of the under the hood stuff, and he's seeing a ton of fastballs, and that is what he's not hitting. And he's in the bottom 2% in the league in expected batting average. Like that. That's bad. That's the walk rate is still very good. He's taking a lot of pitches, but like he's beat very easily by fastball. Could be a mechanical adjustment, which could be what they're sending him down to do. However, I think there's the other part of me that is they have faced a gauntlet of the top end of the league to start the year. This is the worst version. Some of the best guys like they're going to see most of the season are happening right now. Maybe there's something he figures out, but maybe there's a bigger mechanical thing we're not hearing about. What are your thoughts about Matt Shaw, hot off the presses, getting demoted back to Iowa?
So I think my overall, like, it surprised me that he's being sent down to Iowa. First of all, I understand that he struggled. My guess is they're sending him down just before because he's only had 68 plate appearances in the majors, right? They don't want him to get like stuck in a rut where it's like, hey, like you're struggling, we still believe in you. Let's make sure you go back to Iowa, get some confidence, hit the crap out of the ball, and like be good. Like that's my assumption is the strategy here. I
think there's a little bit of a roster karate going on too, because they had to activate Vidal Brujan.
Yeah,
like if you're looking at that group, and I understand Cub fans are going to get potentially enraged by this comment or the thought process in general. Like he's not hitting great. He's not necessarily like blowing people away with his defensive prowess at third base. There's John Birdie on this team who, is a veteran who can provide, way much better floor than what he's providing right now. And Gage Workman being a Rule 5 guy, I think there's a chance, since they're not getting production at third base, that they run with Workman to figure out what he is before they have to DFA him. Because like Matt Shaw has options. Gage Workman does not. I believe at this point they would still have to technically trade to retain him if he gets cut from the 40-man or if he gets so I think there's a little bit of that component going on of maybe let's see what Gage Workman can do with an extended look, and then we can send Matt Shaw to like find his, get Stella to get her groove back, down in Iowa.
Yeah. Well, I saw the announcement that Matt Shaw is being sent down to AAA, and within like minutes, I'd seen multiple people say, "Oh, hopefully it's just not another Matt Mervis situation." It's like,
oh my God,
pause. Everybody pause. Everybody stop right now. Right? Okay.
Very different.
I saw it. It's like, oh, like hopefully they don't do to Shaw what they did to Mervis and not give him a chance. Matt Mervis was not a top 10 prospect in the Cubs system. Matt Mervis was.
He's a really cool story. Like a great story.
Matt Shaw is a top 15 prospect in all of baseball. Like these are not the same. So let's put it into that right off the bat. I think I wish that Matt Shaw would have gotten off to a hotter start. I am not remotely worried. I'm fine with them sending him back down to AAA. He'll kill the ball. He'll be fine. He'll be back up. And this happens, man. Like I've been on the record saying that I thought that he was pretty slump proof for the most part. Like of all prospects, like he's different than Owen Casey, right? Like Owen Casey could come up and go over 10 with 6 strikeouts to start off his career. And it's like, that wouldn't really surprise me. I thought that Matt Shaw was kind of not immune to this, but I didn't think it'd hit him quite this hard, but he's a prospect. He's a young kid. Like this happens. So yeah, I mean, he goes down to a AAA Iowa roster that's already stacked. And so like, I don't know. I'm really excited from a prospect perspective. I'm really excited to watch him in a lineup with a whole bunch of other studs.
Yeah, I think it's it'll be interesting. Like he's not done. And yeah, the Matt Mervis thing, I'm gonna get on my let me stand up a little taller to demonstrate my soapbox I'm getting on. he was blocked in Chicago. I do give the Cubs some credit that they seem to at times make good decisions for the people, and the person Matt Mervis got a run in Miami. That was a really good opportunity for him to get stable major league at bats and a pressure-free, no offense to the Marlins environment. And he's started off really hot. It's
kind
awesome.
of offense to the Marlins. Kind of offense.
Yeah, a little bit. But it's a pressure-free major league environment. But he's looked great, and they gambled on he was the two-way player that when he was hitting was a good hitter, and he committed to hitting, and he had that great, probably one of the greatest minor league seasons we'll see from a Chicago Cub minor leaguer, and had all the expectation thrown on him. And then the Cubs got this guy Michael Busch, who kind of, and this is a dangerous comp, but like similar to PCA in my mind, like the defensive floor has become so valuable that the bat is like a bonus. And it's weird to say that about a first baseman, where like obviously PCA is significantly more valuable by having an insanely good glove and range in center field. But like Michael Busch won that job over at first base. He's been like just a workhorse, and he's got a lot of slug and proved that he could slug at the major league level. There's just a lot less project there, and good for Matt Mervis. Like Cub fans, come on, like just root for guys. Like to me, like every time a guy leaves this organization has success, it says something about the organization potentially that they just didn't have room for that kind of talent. And like, I think that there is value for the Chicago Cubs, like for them to go tell like, yeah, I worked on this and I worked on that. And like literally all that guy needed was major league at bats. And here we are. Like that's good for him. I think it's good for the Cubs. Like it's not Matt Shaw. Matt Shaw is not Matt Mervis 2.0. Like Matt Shaw is a consensus top 15 prospect. Yeah. Like the leap from AAA, and we can talk about this now, to the majors is the biggest gap that it's ever been. Yeah. Do you want to talk about why? I have theories, but I think you watch this every day, and I've talked to Alex Cohen about that. I have a feeling your answer is going to be very similar to what he told me.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I go back and forth for a lot of different reasons. I think that part of it is the biggest thing I look at is the fact that top pitchers, are not wasting any bullets in the minor leagues. And so they're not really good pitching is not in AAA. It just doesn't exist. Like that's not a thing for very long, at least. And so hitters there in AAA are not facing arms that even come close to resembling that in the major leagues. And then that's a major adjustment for a guy like Matt Shaw to go from AAA where he's seeing 97, 98, but nowhere into the zone, or he's seeing 94, 95, but in the zone, like it's a different type of pitcher, and he's got to relearn how to hit against these elite pitchers. Even a lower tier pitcher in the majors is insanely good in that AAA level. You know what I mean? And so I think that's the main reason I look as far as hitting goes. It's just a completely different environment for hitting.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where, I've landed, and, what I've seen is like AAA pitching, like guys, top tier pitchers don't stay there long, if at all. There's guys just completely skipping that to see if, they have the command to stick it. I mean, Porter Hodge is not necessarily a perfect example of that, but he is a pretty good example of that. He didn't really have a ton of AAA innings, and his walk rate in the minors is terrifying. He comes to the majors and the guy just throws bullets. Like, he seems to have a different confidence, and that's in AAA, like guys like Paul Skeens and stuff, like they don't stay there long. Yeah. And then you're seeing a guy like that once every 5 days, maybe, if you're catching a team right, because that's the rest of the guys are guys that are getting their work in, trying to stay healthy. They're not pitching to the same fervor that they used to there.
You know who is a good example is Cade Horton, right? Who's in AAA for the Iowa Cubs right now. And we are, whether we is major league fans, minor league fans, prospect fans, coaching staff in the Cubs organization, they're just dying to get Cade Horton up to Chicago. And it's not because he's lighting the world on fire in AAA. I mean, he's had a good start to the year, obviously, but he didn't last year. He's not going out there and putting up 20 starts of incredible numbers in AAA. We want him to be in the majors because he has major league quality stuff, not because he's producing great results in AAA. And so he's a really good example of, like, he's not going to be in AAA very long. Once the Cubs feel like he's ready to roll, he's ready to show off his skills in Chicago, he'll be there regardless of what he's putting up numbers wise in AAA. And so that's a really good example in my eyes.
Yeah, that is a great example. And, I think there's very little left beyond health for Cade Horton to prove at the AAA level. And it's a matter of how and when the Cubs are going to deploy him on the major league team this year. And, I think there were shouts for him towards, like the middle of last year when they were looking for some bullpen help. And I kind of tossed around the idea of using him, having Craig Counsell do, like the Freddie Peralta experiment with him of, slowly working him as a high leverage reliever to see how good his stuff is, and then stretching him out. Like, I believe they did that with Woodruff as well. Josh Hader. Corbin Burns. Hader, it was the intent, but like he settled in. He never really could elongate his stuff, and he settled in as a multi-inning weapon and still one of the elite back end bullpen pieces in the game. But yeah, I thought that was something still something you could do with him this year. But I really do think the Cubs seem to be in this development path of exhausting whether or not a guy can be a starter before fixing them to the pen. And I think, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. I thought this was kind of an issue with Hayden Wesneski development wise last year. I think it's been a weird issue with Javier Assad of them not really knowing what those guys' roles are. So they got stretched out, and then they weren't stretched out, and they had to be warm up. And Assad is the numbers he's put up with what he's been asked to do are pretty incredible at the major league level. Hayden Wesneski, unfortunately, I think is the opposite example of they stretched him out to be a starter, and then he immediately had to be a high leverage bullpen arm. And it's that's just, if you are a human being and you look at this game as a human being, you're like, all right, I have 20 minutes to warm my arm up. And then the next day you're in a car driving back to the ballpark because the number one starter got hurt in Texas. And you're like, you have to get warmed up in 12 pitches because you're now our bullpen guy. That is such a different way of preparing. And I'm sure it negated a lot of the work that he had done.
I think they need to be more deliberate with the roles they give some pitchers, right? But I'm worried about Ben Brown, and how they're using him. I mean, obviously he's a starter now, but there were the question marks about, is he a starter or reliever? I think they just need to be more deliberate. Where I don't mind at all a guy being called like a Hayden Wesneski or Javier Assad or Ben Brown or whoever it may be. I have no, and I've advocated it for years for guys to be called up to the majors and work as a reliever first before eventually transitioning into being a starter. But my issue with it now is that they're not calling them up as a reliever and then transitioning. They're waffling back and forth, right?
They want
That's the
both.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want both. It's like call Ben Brown. Ben Brown's probably not. Cade Horton's a good example, and Cade Horton is kind of a little bit weird because he's working his way back from injury. Only threw 30 innings last year, so like that's bear with me as I throw out this example, right? But let's bring up Cade Horton. He's a reliever. He's a reliever this year. Say he's even a reliever next year, but he is a reliever. And then you go into the offseason, you say, you know what, next year, now you've learned how to get outs at the major league level. Next year, you're a starting pitcher. And I think I'd like to see more that route as opposed to like, all right, you're 6 innings, you're 1 inning, you're 4 innings, you're 3 innings. Like, what are you? You know? So I think Cade Horton is a good opportunity to do that, where he goes in this year. He's a reliever in Chicago. I'd love to see that. That way they can also kind of limit his innings, so he's not throwing 140 innings coming off a year where he threw 30 innings, right? If they can get him between 90 and 110 or so by using him in the rotation in Iowa right now and in the bullpen in Chicago, that is to me an ideal situation for using Cade Horton this year.
Yeah, I think like one thing that was encouraging to me as we kind of wrap up talking about Iowa was them being so definitive in Ben Brown's role. Because I agree, the waffling to me has been so much more dangerous for their development. So I'm hoping that they are that definitive with Cade Horton and using him maybe exclusively in the bullpen this year, like has been successful for Craig Counsell guys that have been managed in the past for Milwaukee. I do think there's, proof in the pudding there, but I also could see the Cubs looking at his age and being a little more impatient with that process and finding out like what he is with, a starter's length sooner rather than later and then transitioning. But making that decision has been something the Cubs have been bad at. And it has been nice to see them make that decision this year. So I'm hoping that's something that we will continue to see because I was a little worried about Brown, mainly because I was worried about who in the bullpen was going to be another high leverage arm with Brown in the rotation. But I am appreciating them giving Brown, and he has only shown an upward trajectory and results in his 3 starts thus far. We'll worry about who needs to cover what innings later as the season goes on. And we can come back to you and talk about what the options are. Greg, thanks so much for hopping on. I know you got a lot going on, and I know those, the weeks counting down to the baby coming as well. Like there's always something else to do. So I really appreciate your time today.
No, I appreciate it, Jeff. Always appreciate you having me on, and always love just talking prospects whenever I can. So I think I said it last time I came on the show. I really enjoy, and we get on the Cubs on Deck podcast. We get in the weeds, right? Like we're talking about the 4th outfielder in South Bend. We're talking about the number 5 starter in Knoxville. Like we're getting in the weeds with some prospects. We're obviously spend more time covering the top prospects than anything else, but like we also get in the weeds. And so coming on a show like this is a really good opportunity for me to kind of take a step back and look at the organization as a whole and look at the most important elements of the organization. So thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but some of the things changing in what you've been doing, where can people find you on what social channels, and how often will you be, obviously, things might change. How often might you be releasing Cubs on Deck podcasts this year?
Yeah, so we're back to a weekly schedule of Cubs on Deck podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Wherever you listen to the show, you can listen to Cubs on Deck. It can be on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, all that good stuff, but also on YouTube. You can find the channel on YouTube has been renamed to Cubs on Deck. So go check us out, Cubs on Deck on YouTube. Subscribe there. I'm not doing any writing right now, but you can find me on Twitter at Out of the Vines. You can find me on Blue Sky at Out of the Vines, all that good stuff. But that's where you can find me. I'm always talking to Cubs prospects.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I think this is a good reminder that once you're done subscribing and reviewing Cubs on Deck, either on YouTube or any podcast platform, make sure you are rating and review this show wherever you listen, and subscribe to the Bleacher Bunch Network YouTube channel for even more Cubs content, including shows like the Great Son Ranto Show with the just undescribable Danny Rocket, Baseball Rabbit Hole with Michael Cotton, Cup of Cubby Blue with Sarah Sanchez, Cubs PS Plus with the very analytical Mike Waller, and so much more. Greg, thank you so much. And until next time, go Cubs Brickheads.